Well, hello, I'm Johnny Acton, and I'm mainly a writer, but I have become a pig enthusiast. And we had our first 2 pigs last year, and we live in Gloucestershire, my wife, who amazingly is called Percy, and I. But we thought we'd have the native pig of Oxfordshire, which is called the Oxford Sandy and Black, because I'm originally from Oxfordshire. And the Oxford Sandy and Black is slightly a reconstituted species. It largely died out in the 70s. But it's a lovely pig, very good for both ham and bacon. And it was formerly called the plum pudding pig because it has markings that, in some people's eyes, are reminiscent of a plum pudding. And I'd written various books, particularly one called Preserved, in which I preached about how people should handle their freshly slaughtered pig, but I'd never actually done it, and I felt rather guilty about this. So when we decided to move out of London, I made sure we got a place with some pigsties. We had to go rather further afield to get some Oxford Sandy and Black piglets than I'd have liked. These were in Dorset.
Hello, piggies.
When we got down there was an exceedingly attractive, rather black pig. Well, you want them to look feisty and sort of healthy. I mean, if you were a real pig person, you would be looking at whether they had rounded bottoms and all this kind of thing. Well, the ones that you thought, if I had to eat one of these now, which ones would I want to eat? That's not a bad question to ask yourself. And we had to carry them by their back legs like so, and it was almost as much as one could lift, because they're quite fat. And it's rather a good technique. Normally, with a littler piglet, you hold it like this, and if you do that, it freaks out, it goes bonkers, but it's calm so long as it's not feeling enclosed. And it was rather like that, holding them up by their back legs. They quickly sort of settled down and just grunted a bit. I mean, it looked rather like their last day will look, but they didn't know that. The number one rule is you mustn't feed them meat in a big way. I mean, in the old days, people just gave pigs the slops and whatever was in them, the pigs ate. But since not so much BSE, but foot and mouth, they're very, very down on any possible way of meat getting into them. By extension, you're not allowed to feed them anything that's been inside your house. So you could have a lovely apple sitting in the kitchen, but you couldn't, strictly speaking, feed them that apple. So we feed them pig nuts, which are formulated to have exactly the right amount of protein and all the rest of it to make them grow fast. And they eat apples, and we have lots of free apples around here because it's sort of cider country, so that's a big bonus. If you've got 2 pigs, even if you call them the big one and the small one, or number 1 and number 2, you're going to know them inside out. People say don't give them names, and of course in the long run that might be so, but it's just inevitable. You just are going to give them names, and it's going to be traumatic taking them to the abattoir. There's no way around it. I don't think it would have softened the blow if we'd called them A and B. So, yep, we give them names. It's their destiny. I mean, I'm pretty clear in my mind, first of all, that no one's going to keep them for fun. I mean, they are fun, but they're very destructive and expensive. When they get big, they eat a lot of food. And they live for years and years. And what are you going to do? It'll be £400 or £500 by the time it's fully grown. So it's really a way of keeping the breed alive, to keep these rare breed pigs and eat them. It encourages other people to keep them, and thus the breed lives on. Whereas otherwise it wouldn't. I haven't before been that great a fan of pork. Supermarket pork's not that lovely, but this is so delicious, and it just means such a lot more if you've raised it and you knew the beast from which it was coming. I mean, I think if you're a bushman, you have great respect for the deer you've just killed and eaten. Well, it's a little bit like that with us and our pigs. They just seem to love being pigs and just being alive and rootling around. It almost looks as though they're smiling. They are enthusiasts. They're uplifting. They are also reminiscent of humans in some way. Humans have a very strange relationship with pigs. They've been part of the family, as it were, for thousands and thousands of years. But there's a definite sort of fear of the pig, I think, in Islam and a lot of the world. Pigs are taboo because they're so close. They're so close to us in a way. We can have their body parts transplanted into us and they work. We're omnivores like them. We're about the same size, or some of us are. I like that. I like the feeling of kindred, really. You're our differently shaped cousins. I think if you're a vegetarian, there's no way I can argue with you. I can make you think I'm a more worthy person than you are. But if anyone who isn't a vegetarian, this is the least morally problematic way of eating meat. I don't like all the sort of euphemistic nonsense where people don't make the connection between the thing they buy in the supermarket and an animal running around in a field, because that's what it is. That's where it comes from. So let's be honest about that, and that's what we try and do. I think once you've killed it, you really got a duty to eat it. I mean, if our cats kill a mouse and don't eat it, I'm pretty annoyed. It's sort of wasteful. Rather, in the same way, the least you can do for your beloved pet that you've had executed is eat it. I didn't know how it would be tucking into them, but it was all right. It was very meaningful. It was almost sacred. And boy, they were tasty, and that helped as well. It's the hind leg of our former glorious pig Patch. It's a local version of prosciutto crudo, sort of Parma ham. You salt it for, I can't remember quite what the formula was, but we salted that for 22 or 23 days. Bury it completely covered in salt. And then you just wash it in vinegar and hang it up. That's all you do. Cover it in muslin to keep the flies off it. Make sure it doesn't get too warm. Yep. And hang it for about a year, and it should be just utterly delicious. But even if you get everything right, you get alarming moulds growing on it, and you're just to trust that that's all is well. As long as they're not black, the moulds should be well. And this sinister medieval torture device is what I will be tattooing them with shortly. You see, it's rather like a bed of nails. And it spells out the number of our community parish holding. And it's only by tattooing the pigs that you can be sure you get the right carcass back from the abattoir. And also by law they need to have either ear tags or a tattoo if they're being transported. So it's got to be done. Shush! Did you see him kiss me? There's no denying it's a nasty thing taking them to the abattoir. I had many of the symptoms of bereavement, including feelings of guilt, but whereas they're irrational when, your granny dies or something, you're completely right to feel guilty with the pigs. It is your fault. And yes, it was spookily like taking them to the gas chambers. I mean, you hosed them down. Didn't quite play them Mendelssohn, but it was a bit like that. And then you drove them off to a place where you knew they'd be killed. But we made sure we took them to a small abattoir where it would be quick. One thing you have on your side is that, first of all, there's a vet always in attendance when in a slaughterhouse. And secondly, that the slaughterhouse wants to get on with it. It doesn't want, the last thing it wants is a freaking out, sort of half-dead pig. So, we took all the care we could to make sure it was as painless as possible. And it is really, they walk in, someone stuns them with a thing a bit like a giant stethoscope, and they cut their throats and bleed them while they're still stunned, and so it's all over before they get their heads clear. Essentially, they're dead before their heads clear. So, you know, they don't know what's coming. It's a lot worse if people know what's coming. Pigs and animals, I think they're full of feelings and intelligence and so forth, but they don't have concepts. They can't really think about tomorrow. They can't really think, oh, but I wanted a long life and lots of piglets. They don't have the equipment. So I feel a little less guilty than I would, you know, taking you to the Acton.